The moment Janelle Brown finally walked away from Kody, she did so with nothing more than an aging RV, a patch of dusty ground, and a dream she had convinced herself was still worth chasing, or at least that is the story Kody wants the world to swallow. For years, viewers were fed the narrative that Janelle, the sensible one, the so-called financial brain of the family, somehow ended up living in a cramped trailer while the favorite wife relaxed comfortably inside a $1 million mansion surrounded by delicate figurines and expensive artwork. But that storyline is beginning to crumble, because Janelle now has something she never had before, a silent, powerful, strategic ally, David Woolley. According to insiders and rapidly spreading online theories, a quiet partnership has formed between the construction king and the financial queen, and it has sent shockwaves through the entire Brown universe. The most explosive claim is that David may have bankrolled a forensic accounting team to track down the family funds Robin spent, triggering a secret audit that has Kody more rattled than ever. And if these whispers are true, then Kody's assets may already be under review. To understand why the new alliance between Janelle and David is so dangerous for Kody, we have to examine the financial crime scene, and make no mistake, the dismantling of Janelle's finances over the years is a moral crime if not a legal one. For decades, she was the workhorse, the one up at dawn, commuting, earning the steady income, holding the family together financially while Kody chased business ventures that often evaporated. Janelle was the de facto CFO of the entire household. She understood tax codes, kept the budgets balanced, and ensured the lights stayed on. But her logical, practical nature made her vulnerable to someone who knew exactly how to manipulate loyalty. The most scandalous example, the smoking gun, is the 401k. Longtime viewers will remember the heartbreaking moment Janelle admitted she had emptied her retirement account, money she had spent her entire working life building, to pay off debts. But whose debts? They were not hers. They were debts brought into the family by Robin. Janelle sacrificed her future security to protect the present comfort of someone else. She poured everything into the imaginary family pot, believing it would one day look after her in return. She trusted Kody, she trusted the system, and that was her fatal mistake. Fast forward to the move to Flagstaff, where the real financial heist unfolded. The family pot that Janelle had filled for decades was suddenly drained to put a down payment on the mansion for Kody and Robin, while Janelle struggled to find a rental, eventually forced into an RV simply to have a roof over her head. The disparity was staggering and cruel. Yet for years, Janelle tolerated it because she still believed in the dream of Coyote Pass, a dream Kody used as a trap. He kept moving the goalposts, insisting the land couldn't be built on until it was paid off, while the money that should have covered those payments vanished into Robin's lifestyle. We saw the nanny, the expensive jewelry, the 2 luxury watches Kody flaunted. That money didn't fall from the sky. The maths strongly suggests it came from Janelle and Mary. At 50 years old, after working tirelessly her entire adult life, Janelle found herself with no real assets except a trailer and a piece of raw land she couldn't legally build on. She was financially trapped, and Kody believed he had won, that she was too logical, too loyal, too non-confrontational to ever fight back. And then came David. When Christine met him, the public focused on the romance, the smiles, the sunshine. But people forgot to examine the resume. David isn't a fame seeker or a reality star chasing attention. He is a self-made businessman with a successful construction company, a CEO who understands contracts, land development, and, crucially, money. When someone like David enters the picture, the entire dynamic shifts. Imagine the conversations happening behind closed doors. Christine loves David, Christine loves Janelle, and the 2 women are closer than sisters. Does anyone genuinely believe Christine hasn't explained every detail of Janelle's financial mistreatment? And do you think a man who built his own empire listened to the story of Janelle cashing out her retirement to pay off someone else's department store debt and simply shrugged? Of course not. Men like David operate on principles of logic and fairness. When they see a bad deal, they flag it. When they see wrongdoing, they challenge it. The theory circulating online is that David not only gave Janelle emotional support, but also a proper financial strategy. David and Janelle actually speak the same language: numbers, logic, practicality. When Janelle looks at Kody, she sees chaos, manipulation, and inconsistent decisions. When she looks at David, She sees a peer, someone who understands her world. Here is the real bombshell. Reports suggest that David may have introduced Janelle to his own network of legal and financial experts, including forensic accountants. A forensic accountant is not a typical tax professional. They are financial detectives, hired to trace hidden assets, identify questionable transfers, and expose embezzlement. If Janelle wants her rightful share of Coyote Pass and the family earnings, she doesn't just need a solicitor, she needs a forensic audit of the Brown family LLCs. Look at the timeline. Janelle leaves Kody officially, expresses concern about her finances on the show, insists she has nothing, and then suddenly, she's traveling, smiling, looking confident. Where does that confidence come from? It comes from having a plan. The rumor claims that David reviewed the documents surrounding Coyote Pass and the family funds and told her, "You aren't broke. You were robbed, and we can prove it." This brings us to the alleged secret audit. Kody has spent years shifting money between accounts, creating businesses under his name, signing deeds that confuse ownership, and operating in a deliberately opaque manner. He relied on the wives, blindly trusting him and never asking questions. But forensic accountants don't ask questions, they demand answers. If David funded a team to examine Kody's financial trails, they would be looking specifically for transfers from the joint family account into Robin's private accounts, the down payment for the mansion, and the mysterious business expenses Kody has repeatedly claimed. This theory becomes even more compelling when you look at Kody's recent behavior, the anger, the paranoia, the outbursts. He isn't acting like a man going through heartbreak, he's acting like someone who feels cornered. His greatest fear has always been poverty, he talks about it constantly. Now imagine he discovers that Janelle, the wife he underestimated for years, is aligning herself with a man who has more money, more experience, and more influence than he does. David is the anti-Kody. Kody talks, David builds. Kody plays emotional games, David makes practical decisions. The thought of David advising Janelle on how to legally force a sale of Coyote. The spending patterns in the Brown household have shifted dramatically, and fans have begun to notice. The endless art purchases have halted, the constant flow of new decor and luxury items has dried up, and the compulsive accumulation of expensive trinkets seems to have stopped altogether. The question on everyone's mind is simple. Is this sudden restraint happening because they know an audit is coming? If a forensic accountant really is involved, every new purchase becomes fresh evidence of financial mismanagement, potential misuse of marital funds, and questionable bookkeeping practices. And this situation goes far beyond merely recovering what rightfully belongs to Janelle. It is about accountability, fairness, and long-awaited justice. For years, viewers watched Robin cry about wanting the family to remain united, all while quietly benefiting from the financial sacrifices of others. We watched Kody scream about loyalty and obedience while simultaneously betraying the financial trust of the very women who kept the household afloat. If the secret audit theory holds any truth, it flips the entire narrative on its head. For the first time in decades, Kody is not in control. He has become the one under scrutiny. He is the one who must explain where the money went and why the finances never seemed to add up. And the involvement of someone like David Woolley changes the power dynamic completely, because Kody cannot manipulate him. He cannot gaslight him. He cannot intimidate a financially successful businessman with speeches about poverty being a mindset or money simply disappearing. David deals in hard facts, hard numbers, and logical outcomes. If Janelle invested X amount, and the land is worth Y amount, then she is owed Z amount. It is straightforward arithmetic, and Kody despises straightforward arithmetic because it exposes every single inconsistency he has tried to bury for years. Diving deeper into the chaos of Coyote Pass, the land remains the only true leverage Janelle has left. Kody is desperate to hold on to it because he still clings to his fading fantasy of building an empire there. But that dream collapses if Janelle forces liquidation. The widely discussed theory is that David has encouraged her to stay firm. Do not sign away your rights, do not accept an unfair valuation, do not allow yourself to be tricked into taking a lowball deal. Make him buy you out at full market value. And if he cannot afford it, if the money is gone because it was funneled into Robin's lifestyle, then he will be forced to sell the land entirely. If the land goes, the compound dream dies on the spot. Janelle now holds the kill switch to Kody's lifelong vision, and David is showing her exactly where to press it. This is why the rumors about frozen assets feel so believable. Even if a bank hasn't formally intervened, what we're seeing is a strategic freeze. Kody is paralyzed. He cannot move forward because Janelle isn't budging, and this time she has genuine financial and strategic support behind her. Psychologically, this is devastating for Kody. He has spent years trying to portray himself as a high-value patriarch, a charismatic leader, a man in control. And suddenly here stands David, a man who treats Christine with genuine respect, provides stability, and never needs to raise his voice to assert himself, stepping into the picture and helping the very wife Kody dismissed and underestimated. It is humiliating for Kody. It confirms what viewers have suspected for years. The issues within the family were never caused by Janelle's supposed lack of effort or Christine's alleged emotional instability. The problem was Kody himself. Janelle wasn't irresponsible with money, the money was being siphoned off elsewhere. Christine wasn't unlovable, Kody simply didn't know how to love her. Insiders claim this audit may already be underway, and that makes perfect sense. Forensic audits don't happen publicly, they unfold quietly in the background, collecting evidence, reviewing transfers, analyzing accounts, and building a financial timeline. You do not announce this sort of thing on social media. You prepare in silence and strike only when your case is airtight. And Janelle's recent behavior speaks volumes. She isn't complaining online. She isn't begging for fairness. She looks calm, joyful, independent, and composed. That is the posture of a woman who knows she already holds the winning hand. It is the confidence of someone who no longer fears the man she once trusted. Kody used to rely on Janelle being too polite, too loyal, too financially stretched to fight him in court. He likely assumed he could drag the process out until she ran out of funds. But that strategy collapses if David is offering support, even informal support. Suddenly, Janelle has the stamina for a long legal battle. Suddenly, she has resources. Suddenly, she can do what Kody never expected, fight back. She can depose him. She can depose Robin. Imagine Robin sitting under oath, having to answer direct questions about where the family funds went, why certain expenses existed, how the nanny budget was justified, why luxury items kept appearing, and where the money for various purchases came from. Imagine her trying to explain that to a forensic accountant whose sole job is to detect financial inconsistencies. It would be disastrous. And that is the brilliance of this quiet alliance. It enforces accountability on people who have avoided it for years. Kody and Robin have always controlled the emotional narrative, but they cannot control objective financial data. Numbers do not lie. Their version of events cannot override the paper trail. And this shift extends far beyond legal strategy. It is visible in social dynamics too. When Christine and David married, Janelle stood proudly at the center of the celebration. Kody and Robin were nowhere in sight. That wedding wasn't just a family event, it was symbolic. It represented a new structure, a new alignment, a new loyalty. It also acted as a gateway for Janelle to enter David's world, to see firsthand what a healthy relationship, a stable financial partnership, and genuine support look like. It must have been a wake-up call. A moment in which she realized she never had to live with scarcity, guilt, or manipulation ever again. She is intelligent. She is capable. She has earned her share of the family assets. The fans have started calling this next chapter the revenge of the CFO because Janelle is finally stepping into the financial authority she always possessed, and David has become the catalyst. He didn't save her, she saved herself, but he handed her the tools, the strength, and the strategy to claim what is rightfully hers. The biggest question now is simple: what happens next? If the audit uncovers misappropriation, hidden transfers, or questionable financial activity, this won't end at civil court. It could trigger further investigations. It could end Kody's public reputation permanently. It could force a sale of assets, including the mansion. And it could mark the final collapse of the false empire Kody spent years trying to build at everyone else's expense. Imagine the sheer poetic justice of a future where Kody and Robin are forced to downsize into a cramped little RV because they finally have to repay what rightfully belongs to Janelle. Picture the scene of Janelle, calm and steady as ever, taking that reclaimed money and purchasing a beautiful home outright, debt-free, while Kody is left scrambling, desperately searching for a rental he can actually afford. It's the ending viewers have been craving for years, the one that feels like destiny catching up with him, and deep down Kody knows it. Every report of his rising anger, his unpredictable bitterness, his sudden explosions of rage at the world around him all point back to one root cause: fear. A fear so thick it hangs around him like a shadow. He knows the walls are closing in, he knows Janelle and David have been speaking quietly, trading information, comparing notes, discovering inconsistencies. He knows Christine is sharing truths he never expected to be revealed. This quiet alliance, the one nobody sees on camera, is the hidden character in the new chapter of their lives, the presence haunting the grand halls of his mansion like a cold draft he can't escape. And as we peel back the layers of what's happening behind the scenes, it becomes painfully obvious that this situation is no longer just about money, it has always been about power. Kody weaponized finances. He used money to control the flow of affection, to reward submission, to punish independence, to bind each wife to him through economic dependence while showering resources onto Robin as though she were the chosen one. By taking control of her finances and demanding transparency, Janelle is not simply collecting what she is owed, she is reclaiming the last piece of power he ever held over her, snapping the final chain he used to keep her tethered. And David Woolley is the bolt cutter in the story. The whispered theory of a quiet forensic audit is the key to everything. If they obtain the right evidence, if they trace the patterns correctly, then everything Kody built on the unpaid labor and emotional sacrifices of his first 3 wives begins to crumble around him. And the most ironic, satisfying part of all this: Kody orchestrated his own downfall. He underestimated Janelle's intelligence, he underestimated the unbreakable bond between the former sister wives, and he massively underestimated David, someone who has nothing to fear, nothing to lose, and everything required to expose the truth. Now listen carefully, because this next part is essential to understanding what lies ahead for the Brown family. The fallout from this alleged audit has the potential to reshape every single dynamic we've ever known from the show. To understand how David and his team might dismantle Kody's carefully crafted financial world, we first have to understand how Kody built it in the first place. He built an empire not on solid foundations, but on smokescreens and illusions, a maze of convoluted LLCs and shell-like entities. Public records show Kody's name attached to multiple business filings, the most notorious being TLCUK Entertainment, the entity supposedly created to handle family finances after the other wives had walked away. But the timing raises eyebrows, the structure raises even more questions, and these are exactly the types of anomalies a man like David notices instantly. David operates a legitimate, high-stakes construction enterprise where everything must be exact: permits, payroll, liability insurance, government contracts. In David's world, numbers cannot be fudged, because structural integrity and safety depend on financial honesty. If you cut corners, buildings collapse and people end up in prison. David lives in financial reality. Kody lives in financial fantasy. So when Janelle shows David the paperwork for Kody's various business entities, David doesn't see an entrepreneur, he sees a magician performing a shell game, sliding funds from one pocket to another while insisting to the wives that the money's gone. And this, according to the viral theory, is precisely what the forensic team is now untangling, tracing withdrawals from the family pot over the last 5 years, the critical period between the move to Flagstaff and today, the precise timeline where financial inconsistencies became impossible to ignore. Think back to the episodes. How many times did Kody insist they didn't have the money to build on Coyote Pass? He said it endlessly, like a script he rehearsed daily. We can't build. We don't have the cash. We must prioritize paying off the land. Yet simultaneously, viewers watched U-Hauls stuffed with new, expensive furniture arriving at Robin's house. They saw walls filled with bizarre, costly artwork. They watched Kody driving upgraded trucks, Robin appearing with new jewelry and watches, and their lifestyle never once reflecting the supposed financial crisis he kept preaching about. And this is where the audit becomes specific. Forensic accountants are trained to hunt for lifestyle discrepancies, a legal term meaning if your reported income is X, but you're spending Y, and Y is significantly higher, then there is either undeclared income or misappropriated funds. Kody and Robin's lifestyle does not remotely match their reported income, especially now that the three wives who were the backbone of the household finances, Mary with her lucrative business, Janelle with her steady earnings, and Christine with her income streams, are no longer contributing a penny to his world. So where is the money coming from? How are they managing $1 million mortgage and a shopping habit that seems to run endlessly on repeat? The maths doesn't add up unless they've been burning through the last remnants of equity that rightfully belonged to Janelle. David knows this. David has seen this pattern before. And the rumor is that his team is preparing a trace and recover strategy, not just a quest to prove Kody mishandled money, but to prove he mishandled Janelle's money specifically. Now here's the twist. In most marriages, funds are commingled, making separation incredibly difficult. But Kody, in his obsession with patriarchal roles, accidentally created the perfect legal argument against himself. He spent years insisting that each wife ran her own household, each had their own sphere of responsibility, each essentially operated financially as a separate unit. He preached this loudly whenever it benefited him. So if Janelle was truly responsible for her own household, then why was her money used to support Robin's lavish lifestyle? He cannot have it both ways. He cannot declare your money is the family's when it comes to taking Janelle's income, but our money is ours when it comes to funding Robin's mansion. The mounting tension surrounding the Brown family's financial reality feels like a slow-motion collapse, a reckoning long overdue, and every new rumor only deepens the sense that the truth is rapidly closing in. Those watches Kody collected, the gold he reportedly hoarded, the bizarre art pieces he proudly displayed, every one of those items is an asset, and if they were bought with marital funds, then Janelle is fully entitled to a share of their appreciated value. It's no longer just about what is in the bank. It's about the inventory, the real, tangible wealth hidden in safes, cupboards, storage rooms, and walls hung with eclectic, expensive decor. And this is exactly the kind of financial sleight of hand that a man with real-world business experience spots immediately. That is why whispers about frozen assets keep surfacing. If Kody has even the slightest hint that Janelle is preparing to come for the inventory itself, there's every chance he will attempt to liquidate those valuables and stash the cash elsewhere. A freeze order would prevent him from conducting a panicked fire sale before an official appraisal is completed. If he appears stressed, sweaty, erratic, or unusually tense in recent sightings, it may well be because he realizes he cannot shift his secret stockpile without triggering legal alarms. But the true battlefield, the ground zero of the unfolding conflict, is Coyote Pass. This land, which Kody has used as a psychological weapon for half a decade, is now becoming the very thing that could undo him. For years he told Janelle the land wasn't ready. He told her the infrastructure was too expensive, the zoning was problematic, the utilities impossible to bring in. He insisted the development costs were astronomical. And because Janelle isn't a builder, she was forced to rely on his version of the truth. She bought the RV in good faith, believing she'd be able to live on the land while building. Instead, she was met with obstacles that seemed deliberately placed. Then enters a man who actually understands construction. Someone who can walk a property and instantly estimate trenching costs, grading fees, permit requirements, and utility installation expenses. Imagine Janelle taking him out to Coyote Pass, pointing to the dirt, the trenches, the half-built dreams, repeating Kody's claims about £50,000 for water access. And imagine him giving the real number, £10,000. A fraction of what she had been told. In that moment, everything shifts. The fog clears. Janelle realizes she wasn't prevented from building because of insurmountable costs, she was prevented because Kody needed her stuck. Needed her uncertain. Needed her dependent. That clarity transforms grief into resolve. With expert guidance, she can now document the true developmental value of the property, proving not only that the land is viable but that Kody's obstruction was intentional. Such evidence strengthens her ability to demand a forced buyout or, if necessary, a partition sale that would legally oblige Kody to relinquish his empire-building fantasy. The barn dominium she once dreamed of, practical, affordable, elegant, would have added value to the land. Kody crushed the plan, dismissing it because it didn't match his delusional vision of a patriarchal compound. Yet in professional eyes, her plan was entirely sound. That validation is powerful. It reshapes her entire understanding of her financial past, showing that her instincts were right and Kody's objections were strategic acts of control. Behind the scenes, it's clear the other wives are not standing by idly. Christine, who washed her hands of Kody years ago, remains fiercely protective of Janelle. She is the quiet bridge between worlds, gently encouraging support, whispering truths, and ensuring the right information reaches the right ears. And for a man who wants to protect the people he loves, assisting Janelle isn't just strategic, it is an act of devotion. It is modern knightly duty. And that brings us to the mystery of the family businesses. The infamous LLC formed with initials that conveniently include only one branch of the family tree was not merely paperwork, it was a territorial marker. A line drawn through the family accounts. A declaration of hierarchy. If money was funneled from the general household pot into that entity at a time when the other wives were still contributing, that moves beyond questionable ethics. It becomes misappropriation. It becomes actionable. A forensic accountant, armed with subpoena power, does not rely on reality television editing or dramatic confessionals. They look at ledgers. They follow paper trails. They compare withdrawals, deposits, transfers, and purchase histories. They examine lifestyle discrepancies. If publicly declared income is one figure, but expenditures tell a very different story, the discrepancy is treated as a red flag. And Kody and Robyn's lifestyle has been flashing red for years. $1 million mortgages do not pay themselves. Shopping addictions do not fund themselves. Expensive furniture deliveries after claiming poverty do not explain themselves. With the departure of the wives who contributed the most, Janelle with her stable income, Christine with her consistent earnings, and Mary with her side business revenue, the question of how certain bills were still being paid becomes difficult to answer without admitting that communal funds were being dipped into without consent. And Kody's greatest mistake might be his own patriarchal declarations. He loudly insisted each wife had her own household, her own budget, her own financial responsibility. Those same words now undermine him. If Janelle's household was her responsibility, then why did her earnings fund purchases for someone else's home? Why were her retirement funds drained while another household expanded luxuriously? He cannot use patriarchy as both shield and sword. And this is where the legal case solidifies. The very show he used as a platform becomes evidence. Every episode, every statement, every promise he made on camera about family money being reserved for Coyote Pass becomes a verbal contract. And every expenditure that deviated from that promise becomes a breach. Meanwhile, the fear gripping Kody is not irrational. For once, his paranoia aligns with reality. He is right to be worried. Because this time, the other side has resources. They have expertise. They have emotional strength. And, most dangerous of all, they have unity. The wives he once controlled through division are collaborating. The children he alienated are speaking. The narrative he curated is collapsing under the weight of documented facts. And Robyn is far from a bystander. She benefited from the funneling of resources. For years, she played the helpless character, confused by numbers, overwhelmed by logistics. That persona evaporates under legal scrutiny. If her name appears on accounts tied to misappropriated funds, she is liable. And if assets purchased with communal funds are sitting in her home, they become part of the recovery process. She cannot hide behind confusion in a deposition. The forensic accountant is, in effect, the natural predator of financial hoarding. They will find the gold. They will catalogue the artwork. They will place liens on the home if necessary. And as this investigation deepens, Coyote Pass itself becomes symbolic. That barren pit in the ground is no longer just a failed dream, it is the grave of Kody's ego. If the land is forced into a sale he cannot stop, the fantasy compound dies with it. The story unfolds with a desperate man trapped in his own victim narrative, a man whose ego and entitlement have dictated the lives of those around him for decades, facing a stoic, intelligent woman who has finally discovered her voice and her power, and the quiet, confident CEO who stepped in when no one else could. A secret weapon whose presence shifts the entire balance of the battlefield. This is not just a tale of money, it is a story of justice, of accountability, of retribution. The reason we have not heard about the lawsuit officially, why it has not splashed across the tabloids, is simple. Smart legal minds move in silence. Announcing a case alerts the defendant to hide assets, but moving quietly ensures the trap is sprung without warning. Janelle has studied the playbook for years, watched the manipulations, the triangulations, the gaslighting, and she knows exactly how to strike without exposing herself prematurely. While she travels, smiles for the cameras, and posts pictures of her dogs, forensic accountants comb through ledgers and documents, tracing every dollar with surgical precision. The silence is telling. It reveals that the plan is already in motion, that victory is quietly being secured behind the scenes. Her calm is not apathy, it is strategy. The woman who once struggled under the weight of financial inequity is now poised to reclaim every penny unjustly taken from her, and she has the expertise of a sharp, methodical CEO guiding her. Legal loopholes, verbal agreements, claims of gifts, or excuses rooted in complex marital arrangements cannot withstand the hard facts, and fraud is fraud, no matter the social construct. In Arizona, commingled funds and community property laws do not forgive deceit. What Kody considered his clever manipulation is, in fact, a series of missteps that have set him on a collision course with reality. By hoarding resources for himself and one beneficiary while the others were deprived, he created an ironclad case of breach of fiduciary duty, a breach that carries both financial and legal consequences. This is about more than getting the principal back, it is about the lost opportunities, the emotional toll, the financial growth that was denied over decades. Money that could have been invested, appreciated, and provided long-term security has instead been misappropriated, diverted into the acquisition of extravagant, unnecessary assets, and the lifestyle of one while leaving others financially vulnerable. The forensic accountants will calculate the present-day value of those diverted funds, not just the original amounts, and the reality is devastating. Kody's fear of poverty, once merely theoretical, is rapidly becoming self-fulfilling, a consequence of his own greed and mismanagement. He drove away the partners who were his true assets, leaving himself with liabilities, while the woman he sought to control, Janelle, finds empowerment, guidance, and a plan. The clues of the coming season are subtle but telling: refusal to film in key locations, sudden attempts to charm and manipulate, a desperate effort to regain control, all signs of a man cornered and terrified of exposure. Yet, she is no longer prey, she is a strategist, a wolf among the sheep, and she has the pack behind her, providing expertise, insight, and the moral support necessary to navigate the treacherous terrain. Transactions and promises made on camera are now being scrutinized as binding evidence. Words spoken under the guise of casual conversation are being elevated to contractual weight, each lie mapped against reality, each misstep catalogued. The audit, secret yet meticulously precise, exposes the hoarding, the misappropriation, the lavish spending that could never have been sustained without diverting resources from those entitled to them. The material evidence, art, watches, gold, property, becomes the backbone of the case, tangible proof that the financial imbalance was deliberate, systemic, and calculated.